Hello, and welcome back to another episode of the Chris McPherson Show. It is our weekly Around the Grounds episode. We are enjoying, as always, getting across the black and white of your sporting landscape. No grey opinions. Of course, if you haven't already, make sure you subscribe on our YouTube channel so you can follow along and keep up to date. And if you want to know when all of our episodes are dropping, hit that bell down below, give it a tap, and then you'll get all those notifications. And if you want to keep up to date with our shorts, our takes in between the episodes, you can find us on our social media channels, Instagram, TikTok, X, Facebook, at The Chris Mac Show. Nice and easy to find it. But it is time to get into our Around the Grounds, and I'll welcome in my co-hosts for this week's show. We welcome back Christian Monaghan from The First Serve.
Good evening, Chris. Good to be here.
And our resident NBL guru and a few other things to spare, and a tragic Shark supporter, Ben Dunn.
Hello.
It's good to see the JR's got us separated because we're going to get a bit heated when it gets to the NRL Finals a little bit later, Dunny.
I'll have to go get my jersey so you're not the only one in colours.
Right, you're rocking one of the iconic rugby league podcasts with This Week in League. The boys have been going for over a decade now. We're talking about it just before off air, almost 600 episodes. So if we can get to those sorts of numbers, we'll be right up there.
Absolutely, yeah. No, they're still ticking along, and a little bit more streamlined these days. No 3-hour sort of episodes anymore, but yeah, they're still ticking along.
Yeah, it used to be Rogue back in the day. It was a great listen. Still is a great listen, undoubtedly. Let's talk AFL Finals, gents, and it's getting to the pointy end. They're a week ahead of the NRL, and Christian, the Adelaide Crows might have been minor premiers. They might have soared all season long, but they absolutely crashed out with a bang and a thud.
It was sort of expected, wasn't it, in a sense that towards the back end of the regular season, they were sort of winning games, but they weren't winning convincingly, right? You had one or two of those blowouts. I think it was one against North Melbourne and a couple of others. But besides that, in terms of the actual football that they played heading into finals, there were a few concerns, right? I think the suspension for Isaac Rankin, obviously there was a lot of talk around the media around that, but I think on the field, that was such a massive impact because he's a small forward who can be versatile, right? You had a lot of tall forwards for Adelaide, the likes of Tex Walker, who's obviously questions about his future now. Is he going to stay on for another year at the Crows? So I think that was probably one of their downfalls. I just think in the middle of midfield as well, advancing the ball forward, they just got smashed in the middle in the centre bounce clearances, and to go out in straight sets as the premiers, it's pretty disappointing. I think it's the first time it's happened in 42 years or over 40 years, something like that. That's just absolutely crazy stats. So it just goes to show that this season has been wide open. Literally, if you're playing well on your day, you could be anyone. The competition is that close because you remember on the ladder, I think who missed out, the Western Bulldogs on about 56 to 60 points. That's just unbelievable to miss out with that many wins on the board. So the margins are tight this season. So with the 4 teams remaining, it's going to be interesting.
It certainly is. You normally expect when it gets to this point of the year, Dunny, two things, and that is normally you're going to have mostly top-ranked sides getting through to the last, the penultimate week, the preliminary finals, and you're also expecting the team that's had the week off to go in as very warm favourites. We nearly thought we were going to lose Brisbane last week. A lot of people were high on Gold Coast. They've got through, so we do have the 3v4, albeit Collingwood being the host of that one. But then we've got the 8th-placed Hawthorn coming through at the expense of Adelaide. They go up against Geelong. That's a huge rivalry anyway. Is it just going to be the script this weekend, though? Are we going to see Geelong and Collingwood just go straight on through?
Look, you'd have to think so based on the form, but like Christian was saying, it's been such a tight comp all season. But what I thought was pretty interesting was that the 4 clubs left have won 60% of the premiership since 2001. So they've all got the form there. They've all got a bit of history. They've got something to play for. Anything goes in finals, right?
It certainly does. And Christian, they're 2 games that have rivalry stories behind them too. We know Collingwood and Brisbane have played in big games. Geelong and Hawthorn just don't like each other. Doesn't matter which end of the ladder they're each coming at. And they've been at opposite ends a little bit in recent years. But Hawthorn really resurgent now, and they'll like their chances of knocking off Geelong, who are probably arguably the favourites at this point.
Yeah, Hawks have been brilliant. I think there was a period this season where you thought, okay, the Hawks might drop off considering their performance last season, right? No one expected them to have the season they did, and you thought, okay, a dip's going to come. It's going to come shortly, but it hasn't. They've actually gone progressively better as the season's gone on. So that's the scary part for these 3 teams remaining to try and knock off this Hawks side. Obviously, Geelong is the first test for the Hawks this Friday night, so that's going to be a classic. We obviously know the big games on the Easter Monday clashes, which obviously draw a lot of eyeballs. We know the massive rivalry there. We go back, 10, 15 years ago where these teams are playing in prelims and, big finals games, arguably the two best teams for a long, substantial period of time. So, yeah, Geelong, look, you count them in because of experience. You give them the nod as slight favourites heading into this one, but the Hawks are fearless. You look at this side, I mean, they've just got, youngsters all over the place, a bit of experience with the likes of James Sicily, who's been there, done that. It's going to be almost like a flip of the coin here. MCG packed out. It's going to be a great atmosphere. But you'd have to lean towards Geelong, just given the experience. Chris Scott, his nous and, being able to perform on these big stages, you can't disregard that whatsoever. So it's going to be a cracking contest nonetheless.
It certainly is. I love the stories. Obviously, you got the two key forwards for each side in this game. You got Gunston and Cameron. We saw Gunston kick 5 last week, and then you've got the live wires and the characters that put something into the game in Ginnivan and Bailey Smith. Dunny, it's well, look, like if you're a bogan, there's some ideals there in terms of Ginnivan and Smith with the hairdos and the attitudes and everything else. I mean, they make the headlines. We like some personalities, but then you got, like I said, the old school key forwards, which is almost lost in the game. We don't see these guys. We obviously know the story behind Cameron and his goal kicking this season, but there's a couple of really good narratives there. You don't have to look much further.
Yeah, absolutely. Like the guys that are kicking the 5, 6, 7+ goals every week seem to be of a bygone era. You don't really see it that much these days. But what I think is probably going to turn this game is sort of more of a clash around those sort of smaller players. When you look at Ollie Dempsey and Jai Newcomb, they're both in and around the ball so much. They both had 25+ disposals last week. If one of them gets on top of the other, that's going to set a good tone for their team, and it's really going to make sure it's a great matchup. And I'm sort of still leaning towards Geelong. They have been the sort of premier team all year. But yeah, Hawthorn's going to be tough to stop.
And Christian, the Lions up against the Pies. Obviously, we've seen Collingwood underflex their muscle towards the back end of the year. They did it in the first week of finals. The Lions, they look to have slept through the first week of finals, but they've bounced back now, putting an absolute clinic on last week in the first ever finals Q clash, getting it done against the Suns, who, again, lots of people thought the Suns were a real chance of an upset, as I said. So are the Lions to be written off here, or do you think they're a chance?
Just when you thought Collingwood were dead and buried, they just come back yet again. You thought, okay, that's it. The season's, pretty much gone downhill, but they somehow find a way to claw themselves back into contention to win this premiership. And arguably, they're probably up there as, for me anyway, they're the favourites. Out of these 4 teams left, just given the past couple of seasons, I know they narrowly missed out on finals last season, but obviously aging squad, they had to, readjust a bit in terms of their list. It's still relatively the same, but they've just sort of tweaked a few bits and pieces here and there. And obviously that experience and just the way they manage games in the final 2 minutes of matches, that goes down to Craig McRae, the coaching staff. I find it really impressive. So against this Brisbane team who in years past historically have struggled with the MCG, yes, have improved the record slightly over the past couple of years or so, but still, I'd have to tip Collingwood in this one. Obviously, pro Collingwood support on Saturday night. And look, for Brisbane, credit to them, because there was a lot of doubts around their season coming to Gold Coast, as you rightly mentioned before, Chris. A lot of people tipped Gold Coast to potentially cause an upset there at the Gabba, given obviously Lachie Neale going down injured. He's even going to be a doubt if the Lions do make the grand final, so that's sort of a touch and go. So to pick themselves up and to get that win over their Queensland rivals is, props to them. But this is going to be a different beast, a different test altogether on Saturday, and I'm leaning towards Collingwood.
Well, they're two teams that, for different reasons, lots of people don't like Ben Dunn. So I think lots of people will be happy to see both of them lose if that was possible. Unfortunately, it won't be. We're going to see one of them again in the grand final. As you touched on before, these 4 teams all have stellar records in terms of not only winning, but just getting to grand finals over the last 20-odd years. So do you see a case for Brisbane to ruin, the rarity that would be an all-Victorian grand final?
Oh, look, you got to give anyone a chance once it gets into the sort of semis and it's the top 4. it's anyone's game, as they say. But look, I think for Brisbane to get up, they're going to have to use that speed that they've got sort of through the middle and on the edges. They're going to have to use the corridors. They're going to have to be really tactical. Collingwood is so good defensively, so they're going to have to play smart, because anytime they turn the ball over, I think Collingwood's going to punish them. So they've got to make sure that they're on top of their game, because Collingwood's rested now. They've tightened up defensively, particularly coming in towards the finals, and then we saw it against Adelaide. They couldn't be penetrated. So, look, I think Collingwood gets through this one.
That sounds like the consensus is a Geelong-Collingwood grand final. I'd love to see the story of Hawthorn making it just because they're 8th, but we'll wait and see. I don't think we're going to see that necessarily, but we'll wait and see this weekend. 2 big games at the MCG. Looking forward to it. Let's move on to the NRL. Obviously, week 1 of the finals just gone. Friday night, it was Melbourne too strong for a Bulldogs side that most importantly lost Stephen Crichton, which we'll talk about in a minute. The Panthers, despite all of the Warriors fans' tricks of fireworks, burnouts, and threatening to egg the coaches' boxes, did not miss a beat in Auckland, 24-8, knocking out the Wars. The Sharks, Ben, they got it done against the Roosters. Their back 3 got firing, which is the key for the Sharks. And then possibly one of the most emotionally draining nights of my almost 40 years of existence, the Raiders and the Broncos. We thought we had it won a number of times. I'm going to get off the long run here. Reece Walsh, 1, should have been sent off. 2 should have been suspended. 3 shouldn't have been out there, but my goodness, he's some sort of footballer, doesn't he?
Mate, incredible. And you just saw the difference. Like that 10 minutes almost wasn't a punishment for him. Like, he came out fresh and firing, and he looked about 3 times faster than anyone else out there on that field. And he was just doing whatever he wanted, and there was nothing Canberra could do about it. So I'm with you. I'm still thinking that a headbutt should be a send-off, but unfortunately what we've already seen this year, with Morgan Smithies doing it only a few weeks ago, it was never going to be that serious of a punishment, unfortunately. But I don't know. I think I was trying to look for it, but I was convinced that Michael Crocker got sent off for it in the early 2000s. I'm sure he got sent off for headbutting someone. So I don't know when and why that rule changed, but yeah, he absolutely should have been gone, and at least should have had a week off from suspension.
The short answer is the rule hasn't changed. The way that the NRL deals with it. If you do that at park football level, in the Newcastle Rugby League, in the Victorian first grade, doesn't matter where you are, that is a send-off every day of the week. And the thing that rugby league fans who watch multiple levels of rugby league need to understand is the NRL, it's a bit like comparing T20 cricket to Test cricket. There's some differences. One's an entertainment. If we had Brodie Burrows on here, I'd start talking about the difference between Mike Tyson fighting Jake Paul and real boxing. But let's not go down that route, because Brodie's out celebrating his grand final win. Speaking of, congratulations to Brodie and the Lockeroos for getting, I think it was a 28-year drought our friend managed to break. So he was so uncertain of them winning that he actually booked a job interview for Tuesday, which apparently he had to do everything to get through the virtual job interview without throwing up. So well done, Broads. But Christian, let's get your take on this. I know rugby league's not your go-to sport, but again, you've been across a number of sports. We've got a situation here, and we'll talk the judiciary outcomes in a moment, but where a player sledged another player, a different player had an accidental head clash with a player, and a player intentionally headbutted a player, and they all got the same punishment on match day. Does that stack up to any sort of code you can make sense of?
Not necessarily, not in terms of, code of conduct or, headbutts, any of that sort. They should be all separate bans, right? All individual bans based on what's actually occurred, right? And if you've got to judge it by the circumstances. There's heat in the moment. You go in leaning with your head. That should be a more significant punishment, obviously, than if it's an accidental bump or, anything of that sort of nature. So I find it quite ridiculous and bizarre that they're actually sort of given the same ban. And it goes to show that, look, at least the rules are consistent. In other sports, they could be different where they're judging it off. I don't know, for example, football, the round ball game, we know, the handball rule, for instance. We saw a game this morning, the Champions League, Real Madrid. Like, you interpret these rules in so many different ways. At least in this case, it seems like it's consistent, right? But at the same time, it frustrates fans because it's like, well, different scenarios require different punishments and different outcomes, right? So, I find it quite weird, to be honest.
And Dunny, do or should marquee players or marquee games be treated differently in terms of suspensions?
I don't think so, because it then throws the integrity of the game into question, if you ask me. So I think everyone should be treated the same. It should be a blanket thing. If you're in any other business, like Christian alluded to, there's a code of conduct, there's all those sorts of things. Everyone has to meet the same rules, the same standards. And getting someone off just because they are a marquee player or a marquee name and not giving them as much of a punishment is ridiculous as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah, I have to agree. I think it's interesting. It does appear that way. There's certain players, this is his second charge for some form of striking. He did just get a fine. His teammate, Pat Carrigan, who admittedly did break the rules, and it has been, to Christian's point, consistent because, any high contact in that regard has been adjudged when affecting a tackle as a suspension throughout the year, and they've been consistent with that. But yeah, some of those fines and things are a bit questionable.
Because Carrigan gets 1 week, Britton Nickera has just come back from a suspension, and he got 3 weeks for a lesser tackle, in my opinion. There certainly was nowhere near as much contact. It wasn't pulled up at the time like Carrigan's was, and yet somehow there's a different level of suspension there applied to that. So again, to me, that screams of the marquee player, the big name, getting a bit of favouritism there.
Yeah, it's a bit of a puzzling one. I don't think the NRL nor the NRL judiciary have covered themselves in glory here. Ashley Klein, it was an interesting performance, but I think at the end of the day, as a Raiders fan, I'm happy to own the fact that, a bit like in football, Christian, they talk about 2-0 being the dangerous lead. In rugby league, the Raiders leading by 16 with any time remaining is a very dangerous lead because they love going to sleep. I would have been more comfortable if we were trailing by 4 and chasing it, but we faded out. We cost ourselves, and there's a few things there that were very finicky, but they were within the rules. So at the end of the day, it is what it is, and we live for another day and we move on, and that we certainly do. And let's turn to this weekend and let's start the conversation now. Ben, you're at a Sharks tragic. I'm obviously a Raiders tragic. I've got the Raiders colours on, and the Raiders play the Sharks this week. As you well know, and a lot of my friends know, the Sharks I have a soft spot for, but not this week, mate. Not this week. This is do or die. Look, whoever wins this game has to go on and win the premiership as far as I'm concerned.
Oh, I'm 100% with you. But the thing that worries me is, have we both played our grand finals already? Have we all gone a week too soon? Is it going to be too much of a hill for you guys to climb after that sort of physical and emotional game that they've had to go through there with the extra time and the golden point and having it won, having it lost? I don't know. The bit that's worrying me about the Sharks is we've now come out and we're doing the whole, no one backs us in the media. You guys don't like us. Like, we now seem to be getting high on our own supply. And have we already peaked? Look, I was talking to our good mate Dane LaRugitel today, and I said to him that I think it's going to go one or two ways. I think either of us are going to win 13 plus, but I don't think it'll be close.
Yeah, I can see that happening depending on who can come out. And again, as I said, if you've got Will Kennedy, Sione Katoa, Renato Mulatalo going forward and taking that pressure off your forward pack as they did on the weekend, then that's a huge weight to going forwards. And it'll be interesting to see what the teams go with in the end makeup of the bench. Obviously, the initially named bench for you guys is a very big bench. You've kind of tried to roll into that. It worked against the big Roosters pack last week, but it'd be interesting. Christian, I know, as I said, rugby league not your go-to, mate. You want to throw a tip in here? Have you got any thoughts, or just how do you see it playing out?
I'm going to go for the Raiders for this first semi against the Sharks, because I know that defensively they're very solid. I know in seasons gone past that, obviously very well structured. Don't give much of an inch away. Sorry to disappoint Ben, but at home as well, you have to definitely tip Canberra to get over the line. If they don't, it'd be extremely disappointing, given obviously finished first in the table in the regular season. It'd be extremely shattering for their supporter base if they were to fall short at this stage. So Raiders for me in that first semi.
Yeah, we don't do that like Crows.
All I want to say is that the last time we went to Canberra in an elimination final, we came out on top. Ennis gave us the clap, and we went on to win the comp.
Are you guys the only one Michael Ennis has given the clap to?
Not at all.
A great Newcastle man, Michael Ennis. Anyway,
that's a whole nother podcast, that one.
That is. Yeah. Well, let's move on. The Bulldogs and the Panthers will play on Sunday. This is an interesting one because it's basically the Panthers versus the ex-Panthers, Dunny. Bold decision by Cameron Ciraldo to name Stephen Crichton in the extended squad, but Bronson Cherry comes back in. Stephen Crichton, absolutely no chance, surely.
Well, even at halftime, he was already in a boot, so I don't think he's any chance at all. And they were talking after the game that it was anything from a Linz Frank to a syndesmosis. So hopefully it's not a Linz Frank, because that's what, maybe 12 months out. But yeah, he's no chance to play. And without him, we've already sort of seen throughout patches in the season, if they don't have him out there leading things around and being that go-to man, and even that level head, he provides that sort of calming influence, and he's able to get in there and put on a big hit or make a decisive tackle when they need him to, and it sort of calms everyone and they sort of get back on track. So it's really going to be interesting to sort of see who sticks their hand up in that sort of leadership role and takes that on without him. But I think they're well up against it. Panthers, who are doing sort of very similar to what the Hawks were doing, as we were talking about in the AFL. They've charged through that end of season and they're looking pretty unstoppable right now. Nathan Cleary's got the ball on an absolute string. So I think they are almost certainties. So that being said, load up on the Bulldogs, because I'm not going well gambling this year.
Yeah, well, it's an interesting one. They've got a few question marks over the Bulldog side as a whole. Obviously, we know they've been playing musical chairs in their spine. They did beat the Panthers a couple of weeks ago, we know that, but that was the game when the Panthers rested everyone, and it was basically the Panthers New South Wales Cup side minus a few of those even. I'm hoping that we get something like we got earlier in the year, but I think the Panthers are a better side than they were at that point. I think back in late June when the Panthers beat them 8-6 in a real arm wrestle. I think this will be an arm wrestle for sort of 50, 55 minutes, but then I think the Panthers class will show, as you said, those cool heads, they'll press the buttons, and, when you go from the cool, calm Stephen Crichton to the not so cool, not so calm Bronson Xerri, I think those are the sort of things that we'll see where, the Panthers will just be too smart for them, and as long as they keep Brian Toto off Instagram, we'll all be much healthier and much safer. I don't know if any of the fans caught that during the week, the viewers caught that during the week, but that was wild. I don't think it was as big as thing as they made of it. But again, it's 2025 beers. You got to grow up a little. Christian, who have you tipped here? Are you going the Panthers to continue chasing that extensive run of premierships and extend it out maybe to a fifth?
Yeah, I've got to give it to the Panthers. I mean, if I tip against the Panthers, it'd be foolish, wouldn't it be? Considering what they've achieved over the past few years. It's just crazy to think that there's actually a salary cap in place and they're still doing the things that they're doing. And Melbourne Storm are the same, right? They've sort of been there for God knows how long, ever since Craig Bellamy's been there, essentially, right? It's just been unbelievable, some of the work that these clubs are doing. And it just goes to show that the work they've done, behind the scenes, off field, the recruitment, second to none. So Panthers, I'd be very shocked, if they come away with a loss here, and they should be winning this one for me.
Yeah, I think so. Well, we'll wait and see what comes of this weekend. We'll undoubtedly unpack it and pick apart what we shape for the next week, which will be the prelims on next week's Around the Grounds. But until then, let's move on, and we're going to go straight down the middle with our booming first serve, pardon the pun, Christian. We're going to talk some tennis right into your wheelhouse. The Davis Cup happened last week, and the qualifiers for the final round. And in terms of a few surprising results, but the most surprising was, when we have a look at the Aussies getting bundled out by probably a side that we didn't expect in Belgium. Two players ranked significantly lower than their direct opponents for the Aussies, but a big underperformance on day one cruelled the Australians.
Yeah, we were previewing the ties last week, and we said on paper this should be a win for Australia, but it went down to that first day, right? You were there at the stadium, Chris, and the atmosphere, I can imagine, would have got sucked out given those first two singles results. Alex de Minaur going down early to Rafa Collignon, who was the absolute hero during this time, and cramping during the start of that third set against Alex. He was almost walking to the chair, wasn't he, to retire. He was that spent. The cramps were that bad, but Steve Darcis, the Belgian captain, said to him, mate, as long as you're able to actually walk on that court, you're playing. Give it all for your country, and that's what he did. And ultimately, shockingly, was able to get a line against Alex, because let's not forget, de Minaur does not lose against players ranked low that very often, right? So he's usually very consistent in that department. Obviously, very reliable when he represents the green and gold. So then it obviously came down to Jordan Thompson. Hasn't been 100% fit throughout 2025, a few niggling injuries. So Aussies were 0-2 down. And then Hewitt had to make some changes on day 2, right? You saw the doubles, John Pearce going out, who reportedly had carrying a bit of an injury. So it was Hijikata and Thompson able to pull Australia back into the tide. De Minaur wasn't going to lose 2 in a row, right? Surely for Australia, so 2-2. And then obviously Vukic, Hewitt had that big decision to make whether to stick with Thompson or go with Vukic. And Thompson, again, like I alluded to before, he's been riddled with injury, not fully fit. It was questionable whether he should even be in the squad in the first place. So Hewitt said in the post-match that's ultimately the reason why he went for Vukic. Fresh legs, Sydney sider as well. So ultimately just unfortunately couldn't get the job done, picking up that first set, which I thought was evenly split, 50-50, could have gone either way. But to Belgium's credit, especially Colin Yon, who just performed outstanding, some of his shot making. And that's the beauty about tournaments like the Davis Cup, United Cup. You get these sort of unknown players emerge out of nowhere and you think, okay, this guy's promising, this guy's got a bit of talent, and Collignon is one of those players. So yeah, congratulations to Belgium, fully deserved it. And for Australia, it's sort of a bit of soul searching now, missing out on a berth for the Davis Cup finals, set to be played in November. And I guess it goes down to our depth a bit. Alexi Popham was injured, wasn't able to make the trip. And, you look down the list in terms of the Aussie youngsters coming through, there's not many, Chris, that are, putting their hand up to say, I can be next in line to take the baton away from De Minaur and these players. It's just not there at the moment. So that's the one concern I'd have if I was an Aussie tennis fan.
Yeah, Dunny, I guess it's something we grew up, with the Hewitts and the Philippoussis and the Rafters winning these Davis Cups, and we're always right at the pointy end. And even in recent years, we've probably punched above our weight, but to miss out on that final 8 is a bit of a body blow.
Yeah, and I was reading it's the first time we've missed the 8 since 2021, and we've been finalists sort of 2 out of the last 4 years. So, definitely a surprise that we didn't have enough to pull it through, especially like we're talking about, like the ranking should have been enough to sort of maybe get you over the line. But I don't know, we seem to be seeing a theme in today's podcast that you just can't always rely on being that top place person or team to get you through. So, yeah, look, should we have rested Thompson? I don't know. There's certainly a lot of conjecture online about it, but like if someone's already been struggling with some injuries and stuff, you can't really throw them out there and expect them to do their best. I think it was a damned if you do, damned if you don't type situation. So he made a bold choice, which could have made him a hero, but unfortunately we went down, and what are you going to do?
Hindsight's a wonderful thing, right? But the one thing we do know is that Argentina, who beat the Netherlands, Belgium, Austria, who beat Hungary, Germany, who were convincing against Japan, the Czechs, who knocked out the US, Spain, who had to fight back in their 5th tie, and France will join Italy in those finals that Christian alluded to. And we'll talk about those as they get closer as we head towards November. We do have another big tournament, though, Christian, very briefly, the Laver Cup this week. It kicks off, and it's a weird time for it to be sort of happening. You and I have been talking about this as Team Europe takes on Team World. And Ben, you jokingly asked earlier when we were talking in the lead up to this show whether Pat Rafter was doing anything. He's the vice captain of Team World, so there you go. But very, very quickly, we've seen a few withdrawals of some big name Americans from Team World. Who's going to win this one, Christian?
Well, firstly, it's good to see some withdrawals from the Americans, because everyone's arguing, Team World, it's all just Americans. You might as well just call them Team America. So it's good to see the likes of, so it's good to see, the likes of João Fonseca, Francesco Cerundolo, Alex De Minaur has come into the team now to replace, those injured players. So great to see a bit of diversity. But you look at Team Europe, Alcaraz, Zverev, it's going to be very, very difficult to look past them, isn't it? I'd probably be tipping, Team Europe to get over the line here. They're playing in San Francisco for the first time over there in the States at the Chase Center, so should be a good experience over there. I've seen Roger Federer a few social reels online, talking to the likes of Fonseca, who idolized Federer, and Federer has obviously been a big advocate of this tournament ever since the inception. Let's not forget, it's where he retired a few years back. His final game in the doubles with Rafael Nadal. So it's a really already starting to become a prestigious tournament. I'm with you, Chris. It's a weird spot to put it in the calendar. Personally, I'd put it towards the end because it's more of an exhibition tournament, in all honesty. But is what it is.
Yeah, certainly. All I can say is thank goodness that Team Europe didn't pick all of their best players, because they've got the top 4 players in the world that could have played for them. So, Yannick Sinner and Novak Djokovic taking it easy on them. But it's an interesting one. Hopefully Alex de Minaur can shake off the rust from the Davis Cup, although I think I'll be dirty if he goes and leads a dominant performance for Team World after what he dished up last week. But it is what it is. We'll keep an eye on that because, as I said, it does kick off over the weekend, I believe. It'll be Friday night their time, Saturday Australian time over there, as you said, in San Francisco at the Chase Centre. We'll go across those 3 days of the weekend. So looking forward to seeing how that goes. Just, as you said, another exhibition for us to keep an eye on, and 4 of the top 10, about 8 of the top 20 in action. So keep an eye on it. There'll be some quality tennis to be played. Before we move off tennis, Christian, there was some breaking news in terms of the Billie Jean King Cup as well.
Yeah, so Australia, the women's side, is playing in November for the qualifiers. So this is to actually get into the 2026 qualifiers to essentially qualify for the finals, the Billie Jean King Cup finals. So it's a bit confusing in that respect, but they're playing in Hobart, and the big news coming out is Nicole Pratt is temporarily replacing Samantha Stosur as Australia captain. Obviously, Stosur going away for the meantime on maternity leave, so someone needs to step in, and Nicole Pratt's been around the Australia setup for quite a few years now, a very experienced head, knows her stuff, so I think it's a no-brainer in terms of appointment, and hopefully Australia can get the job done. They're playing Brazil and Portugal over there in November. So, fingers crossed that at least one Australian side can give us some positive vibes in these qualifiers this year.
Yeah, certainly. They didn't do the best earlier in the year when they got bundled out by Kazakhstan up in Brisbane, but hopefully the cooler climes of Hobart up against some of those sides will serve them a little better. A couple of things to fire through before we wrap up, gents. The bat off we've been talking about in the build-up to the Ashes. It's still months away, but we like to do things way too early when we can, and we've certainly seen some runs from a few players. Glenn Maxwell, he's probably not going to be in the bat off, I wouldn't have thought. But Curtis Patterson and Marnus Labuschagne both getting some early runs done in the one-day cup, or the Dean Jones Cup, as I believe it's now known.
Yeah, Dean Jones, one of my heroes when I was growing up. Yeah, look, it's some good signs. I think we've seen a fair bit of decent cricket, and the Australians all look like they're in pretty good form. So it's looking like that we're going to have a good summer.
Certainly does, Christian. It's exciting as well because not only have we got the one-day cup with a couple of games gone already as we record this, but the Australia A side's over in India, and despite some rain and interruptions, they've got their first game underway. And Sammy Constas is in the runs. He got a century. Campbell Kellaway with 88, and Josh Felipe, who's one of the keepers in waiting in quite a queue of good keeper batsmen we've got, also a century against the Indians. A couple of starts for the likes of Cooper Connolly as well. So good to see Sam Constas starting to find some form, because we need to sort out this opening pair for the first Ashes test later this summer.
Yeah, I think it's been a problem, that opening batting partnership on a couple of occasions this year. But Sam Constas, as you touched on, I mean, it's funny because obviously he made that breakthrough, with his debut, and people were raving on about him with his shot selections and the next big thing. And then obviously sort of fell off a bit, probably fell off that high, and you thought, okay, maybe he's a bit too inexperienced, not quite ready to be consistent and stand up, especially all things considered, to be in the conversation to start in the opening batting for Australia. But I think with that century, just recently, that's a big confidence boost for him. And selection wise, a big headache for the Aussies now, because he can, definitely has the potential to stand up and offer his talent consistently. It's just whether he can put it all together. So a couple of questions for Australia, but I guess it's one of the exciting times of year heading into the Australian summer for cricket fans, right? Obviously got the Boxing Day test and all the other tests coming up in the summer. So it's exciting times for cricket fans.
Well, runs are the currency that matters, Dunny, and we love nothing more than just using one result to try and catapult someone into the team. But hopefully a few good innings over there in India, and then some form into the early Sheffield Shield from him and some others that will really, make it a difficult decision for a good reason for the selectors, I guess.
Yeah, let's hope. I mean, Australian cricket seems to be sort of on the way back up. I remember when I was a young fella, like the Australian A side would have gone over and won Ashes comps. So, look, let's hope that we get back up there. But it's really encouraging to see the youth coming through and quite a bit of the depth that we're able to see now.
Certainly. Positive signs, that's what we like to see. We know the bowling options are aplenty. Bo Webster getting in the wickets early as well. The one thing that was a bit controversial in the One-Day Cup, though, I will mention, Marnus Labuschagne having a bit of a confrontation about obstructing the field, and we saw an appeal for obstructing the field, which I guess you don't often see at this level. And, just a little bit unsurprisingly, Dunny, that Marnus Labuschagne's annoying his opposition.
Is it? Look, people are going to get annoyed by different things these days, but I like a bit of personality in all my players. It doesn't matter what the sport is. I'd rather see those characters, and good on him. Go ahead and annoy everyone. That's it. It makes for a good spectacle then when you see people turning up trying to take his head off when he's got the bat or trying to zip him back past him. So I'm all for it.
Well, they say it doesn't matter what the ticket payers are paying for. Whether they want to see you win or lose, they pay the same price. Well, moving on now to the NBL, and it is countdown right on as we go live to air on Thursday night. We are only a matter of about an hour and a bit away from the NBL getting underway. It may well be underway by the time you've listened to this and tuned in. We kick it off, Ben Dunn, with Tasmania taking on Melbourne United. And this season we've had the NBL Blitz. We've seen a lot of these pre-season games. We've had some Japanese teams out here. We've seen all sorts of things going on. We've got teams coming up against European opponents this weekend in amongst the season kickoff. It's a little bit of a logjam. And next weekend we see the New Orleans Pelicans come to Melbourne, which is really exciting. So many milestone things. But for me, the biggest milestone that we're talking about is the fact that this is a competition for the first time in my memory where we're going into the season where arguments can easily be made, not just for top four finishes, but for title contender status for all 10 franchises.
Yeah, absolutely. Like we talked about when we were talking about the Blitz, it's like all the teams sat around and went, how can we build a team that's going to win this Cup? Let's do it. And they've all done it. You can sort of throw, a blanket over at least the top four, if not the top six, if not the top eight. And like you said, there's a potential argument for all 10 teams to be able to win the comp. We've been sort of floating around at the level of sort of that NBA relevancy. We've had the Next Stars program and all that sort of stuff, but we're finally at a point now where, and hopefully we're going to get to see it with the quality of the players we got, but are we going to be able to maintain that sort of NBA level or even that sort of next tier down level competition? And I think arguably this year is the year that we're going to see it and we're going to get it. So I'm really looking forward to it. Teams like Tasmania who are kicking off the season, like they've done so well, like their backcourt, sneaky good. They got depth everywhere. They're going to be able to shoot the lights out. So, look, I'm struggling to pick a winner outside of maybe sort of Adelaide by a hair with Bryce Cotton and their key signings, getting Trez back and stuff like that. But, it's going to be a great season.
It certainly is. There's a couple of sides there that, you talked about Tasmania. We thought with some key injuries they might have been in trouble. Then some of the recruits they've got, the Tasmanian Tiger, the great import there. That's a great one. And then, Perth, another one that everyone was like, what are they going to do without Bryce Cotton? And they go and get Mason Jones. So this is absolutely alive and well. We've got Delhi going to Sydney. They'll come up against Melbourne, and that's a perfect segue to throwing it to you, Christian. I know your summer's absolutely chock-a-block with tennis for the first serve, soccer for Round Ball Australia, football for Round Ball Australia. Better get that right, otherwise Lockie Avel will be popping up and sorting me out. Do you get a bit of an eye on the NBL? And I'm assuming you've got a little bit of a Melbourne bias if you do.
I do indeed. I was watching bits and pieces last season. Melbourne United were one team who really stood out. I mean, Chris Golding, 3-point king. He makes the game so entertaining, doesn't he? Just shooting buckets left, right, and centre. I think, given their season, last campaign, I thought, they were super impressive. The way, obviously, I'll defend as well, and being able to score from different ways. They're very versatile in that sense. So, in terms from a Melbourne perspective, they're obviously a team to contend again. But as you boys rightly mentioned, I guess the field is really wide open, isn't it? With the acquisitions, Mayo, Bryce Cotton, with that move, it's like, the Wildcats sort of, are they going to fall off? But then you see, the signings they've made as well to sort of back that up. So it's going to be really interesting. And, in terms of an NPL sense, it's great to see in terms of a marketing promotional aspect that it's really starting to lift in this time of the season, competing with the likes of football and cricket. So they've done well on that side of things to really try and get a lot of eyeballs onto the sport, and they've done well, especially over the past couple of seasons. So this campaign should be probably one of the best, to be honest.
Yeah, I'm certainly interested to wait and see it get underway tonight. Tasmania against Melbourne. They will be without CG43 for the first game, Melbourne United, which is a bit of a body blow up against Tasmania there. But look, I've got a real eye on the Kings. I also think the Illawarra Hawks, the defending champions, are flying a little bit under the radar, but we'll wait and see. We'll be doing some live NBL watch-alongs during the season. Danny will be joining me. I know we've got Nathan Campbell as well. We'll have a few other people popping in as guests. I guess contributors, stars, whatever they want to call themselves. I'll probably just be a contributor. I don't know if I'm a star when it comes to any basketball, if anyone's seen me shoot hoops, but really looking forward to it. And I'm looking forward to getting down to Melbourne for the Pelicans versus the Melbourne sides as well. But gentlemen, Ben Dunn, a big thank you to you. No good wishes for the weekend, but I look forward to talking to you next week when the rivalries are, put behind us.
Yeah, we're mates again. Absolutely. Thanks for having me.
And Christian Monaghan from the First Serve, as always, your breadth across the sporting landscape, your depth on the tennis is greatly appreciated.
Thanks, mate. Anytime. Appreciate it.
Well, big thank you to everyone for tuning in. As always, we love to have you here for the black and white of sports. No grey opinions. We like to get into the breadth of your sporting landscape. Big thanks, as I said, for tuning in. If you haven't already, hit the subscribe button, hit the bell to get those notifications. And we look forward to talking to you again soon on either our Around the Grounds or our Daily Doses. In the meantime, you can find us on our social media channels, X, Instagram, Facebook, TikTok, at The Chris Mack Show. We'll chat to you again soon.